Perfect. That sounds good. All right, no problem. I'll finish this. So I'll stay on with you right here, and then I'll take this down and upload the new one. Is that okay? Perfect. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. We're working on microphone issues, so the online can hear what they're saying. That would be helpful. So in the meantime, just hang in there and enjoy. Thank you. Enjoy. We're right with you.
Can you get this to Barb and tell her when she wants to turn that on?
So that's the latest thing.
Okay, I think we're ready to get started here real soon. We are filming tonight. This is a live stream experience, so if you have a good slide, you might have cameras up there. So if you want to position yourself, the good view. So we'll get started in just a second. A minute till you're ready.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Test 1, 2. It's not supposed to be. Just a minute. If Tim can hear, we're okay. Tim here?
Is my head interview?
Yes? Okay. Okay. Are we live? Oh.
We're live.
Hi, everybody. All right. Glad you could make it tonight. Good evening. My name is Ron Lamont. I'm the Regional Operations Coordinator for the Orange County and the entire region. We also have Barbara Howard here tonight, who's our Regional Operations Coordinator for San Diego and Region South. And other rocks are with us, but they're here virtually because they're out there in Phoenix working with us as well. So glad you could be here tonight. It's our third and final professional development meeting for the year. And we've had some really good experiences with us together so far this year. I'm looking forward to another great evening.
Hold.
Hold it.
Sorry, I get sound right.
Okay.
We're gonna go. Turn that off by holding the button down. And talk without for a second. Give me a test.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello, Tim. We're going live, but we're not quite live. We're trying. Technology is a wonderful thing. Now, if you
Ron, go without your microphone. We can hear you without that right
You're
now.
online? Yes? Okay. All right, so back to business.
Yeah.
We have a full evening planned, some great presentations that I think will be very helpful for everybody, no matter what you do for us as far as what you teach or where you teach or how you teach. So hopefully you'll enjoy the evening. We always start things off with our guest from Christ College here at Concordia University, because we believe it's very important for the connection between the university as a whole and the School of Education. And so each time we have a meeting, we invite somebody from Christ College to come and give us a devotion related to Lutheranism and understanding Lutheranism and our mission here at Concordia. And so tonight we are really glad to welcome C.J. Armstrong, who's going to give us a devotion, and then we pray for our meeting together.
Thank you.
So sorry, Chris.
Thank you. Makes me want to come back to work. Thank you so much. I never get that. Wonderful. And welcome, especially to those of you who are new. I've gotten to meet a couple of new faces. Welcome to Concordia University, and God bless your efforts and your service here among us as faculty. I've got a lot of pedigree with education. My mother taught all through my childhood in public schools in Arizona. My in-laws, my wife is a kinder teacher in one of our Lutheran schools here. And I just got a visit from somebody who just finished his exit interview after some middle school student teaching. You remember being at that stage? And he was excited to tell me all about it. And I'm going to be graduating a good gaggle of alumni and alumni. I teach Latin also, so I got to get those words right. So glad to see you also serving the little ones and our bigger ones here at Concordia. This is 2017. 1517 was the day that Martin Luther took his master's thesis and nailed it 95 times to the church door at Wittenberg. You know about that, right? 1517, a major date for Reformation Christianity. And so we celebrate the 500th anniversary of the Reformation this year. And one of the things that I've been serving pastors' conferences and others with lately is just a little bit of review of Reformation history. And what's interesting in that history, when we think about Lutheran distinctives, is that just because the Reformation happened doesn't mean that all of a sudden the church all became one. We still have differences among us in Reformation body of churches as well. And so when we think about Lutherans, sometimes we think about that as sort of an odd stripe, a cap in the regard to Protestant Christianity, because some people say that we're a little too Roman Catholic, and somebody say, well, we're a little too evangelical, and this sort of thing. And Lutherans, like theologians like me, we usually just say, well, I'm just saying what the Bible says, right? And that's when these theological distinctions and disputations start to happen. I've been translating for a long time now a work that hasn't ever been translated into English. In 1586, it's called the Acts of the Colloquy of Belliard, and it's in this crucible of later 16th century Christianity, Reformed Christianity, and Lutheran Christianity, that one of the major distinctions on just thinking about how to understand what God has said has come up in this argument that I've been translating. And what I'd like to offer us today in thinking about Reformation history and how we celebrate 2017 is the great Reformation heritage that says this. Number one, what we rely on in the 16th century, what we rely on in the 21st century, what we rely on for all of our students and what we do at Concordia University as a Lutheran institution also, is we rely fundamentally only on one thing, and that is on the promises of God in Jesus Christ. What God has actually revealed, what God has actually said. And that sounds like something that all Christians agree on, and we have, certainly. For the last couple of millennia, for the last 80 lifetimes of Christian history, we've relied on what God has said, what God has promised. And where might that go in interesting directions? Well, when we get our human attitudes, our human emotions, and our human feelings involved with it. God certainly cares about our emotions. God certainly cares about our feelings. But I know myself, over many years, what I want to make certain I trust is not always my feelings. This is what Obi-Wan said to Luke when he was about to destroy the Death Star. You remember that. Trust your feelings, Luke. Well, that's not what Christians can say. We got to trust only the promises of God in Jesus Christ. In the argument that I've been translating back and forth, it has to do with a Lutheran theologian and a Reformed theologian, a man named Jacob Andrea, who wrote one of our confessional statements called the Formula of Concord and other kinds of things in the later 16th century. And the inheritor of Calvin's seat at Geneva, a major theologian in Switzerland, by the name of Theodor Beza. And they're going back and forth on what does it mean to say that God gave promises. And they talk about the Lord's Supper. They talk about baptism, things that, well, we've had theological disagreements with various church bodies across the board for the last couple of thousand years. People are arguing about these kinds of things. But this is the way that this argument goes. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. I'm going to keep my devotion brief. But once again, what I'd like you to do is listen to the work of people that were having a real conversation 500 years ago. And listen to what the Reformation legacy is. The Reformation promise that what we hang on to is only what Christ has promised, His Word, and not necessarily our feelings about it. Jacob Andre says this: let the whole audience judge whether I have brought up to confirm our opinion our interpretations or patent testimonies of Scripture without human interpretation. Paul, in the New Testament, knows one baptism in the church and does not recognize in place of circumcision what is apart from the Spirit. So just a sprinkling of water is no baptism at all, which consists not only of water, but also of Spirit. This Spirit accomplishes regeneration, renewal in the baptized through the washing of water. But we can't hear at all the idea that many thousands of infants are baptized who are never regenerated, but rather perish eternally. I don't think that there's anyone in this gathered audience who would agree with you in this matter. Why? Because God keeps His promises. In other words, when God says, I have made you my child, then that's a promise we can take to the bank. God's own child, I gladly say it, I am baptized into Christ. He, says Jacob Andre, who was formerly a child of wrath, has now been adopted by God and has truly become a child of God through baptism. How can you say that you can be sure of God's presence and adoption in your life? Theodore Beza goes on to say this: I feel the Holy Spirit and his operation in me, and if I feel it, I can certainly declare that I've been truly regenerated. Jacob Andre answers this: well, if the consolation about adoption happens because of feelings, feelings can change. And what do people feel in the worst trials? Even truly pious people, even true Christians, sometimes are tempted. And those feelings that we have are plainly contrary to the Spirit's operations, from which they can conclude nothing other than that they have been rejected by God. Have you ever felt rejected by God? I know I have. In trials of this kind, says Jacob Andre, it's necessary that they flee not to the feelings, but to the Word of God, to the sacraments, especially baptism. Satan too should be resisted, since we were baptized, and so we have truly also been adopted as children of God. As John says, especially when our heart condemns us, especially when our heart condemns us and is full of no other thoughts than that we have been eternally damned. Nevertheless, we ought to resist thoughts of this kind, inspired by the devil, since, what's the promise? God is greater than our heart, who in baptism has offered us not only adoption, but has even conferred that adoption on us. Just as he said, he who is baptized and believes shall be saved. So don't look to your heart to ask, am I saved? Don't look to the quiver in the liver or your personal experience. It might just be indigestion, right? What do we look to? Only and ever as Reformation Christians, and here's the Lutheran distinctive. The legacy of Reformation history, the Word of God, the promise of Christ, especially when I doubt myself. I do not doubt the promise of Christ. The hymn that we sing about that, on Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. Right, let's have a prayer. Gracious Father in heaven, we thank you that in Christ you have given us great promises. We thank you for men and women throughout the ages who have wanted to look for the truth, strive for the truth, fight for the truth, and indeed die for the truth. Grant us a spirit of unity, a spirit of harmony and concordia, that we might look to each other for answers and might call out error where it is and affirm each other in the truth, so that we might ever stand, only and ever, on Christ, the solid rock. Give us hearts that are humble, that seek you and the truth that you offer in your scriptures. And when our hearts condemn us, show us the light of your truth in Scripture, that we may flee to where the answers are always in the way, the truth, and the life, even Jesus Christ, in whose name we pray. Amen. God bless your meeting, and God bless your service. Thank you.
And CJ, would you please express our appreciation to Christ College for
Absolutely.
being here with us?
Well, look forward to the next time.
All right, thanks so much.
Ron, can we pause and fix the sound for a moment?
Okay, we're taking a pause.
Turn the microphone on that you have.
Okay.
Did you turn that should be on me? Okay.
Okay, we're on. So, how many of you are new here tonight? Yeah, first time with us? Yeah. Saw several faces. You're not new. Welcome. So glad you guys could make it. And it's so good to see new faces. It really is. And if you're online, glad to see you with us as well. If you're new online, would you raise your hand?
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that one's on.
This one's on.
We're getting microphone sound from microphone I can't find.
Okay.
Can they hear online without the microphone?
There somehow something's picking up the whole room sound.
Okay.
I can't find what that is. So when you have that on, it was getting both. So
You want this off?
for now, I can't find the source of all the sound.
Okay.
So we're going to go with the ambient room sound. It's not the perfect sound, but they're hearing it,
Okay.
and we'll have to do with that for right now.
Okay, if you're with us online, please be patient, and thank you so much for...
Can you give, they'd like to know how they can log in, the reminder for logging in attendance online.
Okay, make a note that we will get that to them before the end of the meeting. Okay? And I want to thank Tim Schumacher tonight. Let's give him a hand. Okay, Tim has jumped in to rescue us as we have lost our dear Aaron Lucas. And so Tim has graciously accepted the job of working our test tonight. So thank you, Tim. Should we continue or should we wait, Tim? Yeah,
I think we're, go ahead.
okay, good. All right, so thank you. If you're new with us, I'm glad you could be with us. If you're just brand new with us. You notice the theme tonight is love, Valentine's. And it's kind of sappy, but it's because we love you guys as our faculty and our adjunct faculty. We really do love everything about you and what you do for us. So thank you, and happy Valentine's Day. For those online, if you can hear me, please feel free, and we encourage you to participate tonight in our meeting because you're out there doing the same thing we're doing here. But we want to get your questions and your comments, so please feel free to do the chat, and we'll interject those as appropriate throughout the meeting. Okay, so we're all working together in that house here and also out in the field. All right, so I think we're ready to start. We have 3 different presentations tonight, and our first one, we've talked a lot about the capstone, and there's always discussion about capstone, but there's always that need to find out more about how the capstone really fits into all the classes that we teach, not just the capstone project itself. And if everybody does their part, how it's going to benefit the students in the end when they go to do the capstone. So Kelly's going to talk to us tonight about capstone connections to all classes and programs so that you see as a part of the puzzle here how you contribute to making the capstone successful in the end. And I think a big part of that, actually, we're going to touch on it, is just being that encourager throughout the whole program as they start the process of saying, don't worry, capstone's going to be okay, we're going to get you there and help with that. So thank you, Kelly. All yours.
So I'm actually going to talk about the capstone, what is it? What courses actually encompass the capstone, what the students do when they complete the capstone, and then following my discussion will be Dr. Catherine Webb, and she'll talk about capstone connections and how we have embedded certain components of research into all the courses in the programs, so students are getting pieces of it as they build through. Okay, so the capstone encompasses 16 weeks. It's 2 different courses. So it's EDU or EDSC in school counseling, or EDUT and Ed Tech 580, and Ed Admin is the only program that has a different number, which is 581. All the same class in all 4 programs. So it's the same Blackboard shell that everyone uses. The only difference would be the topic that they would come up with. If they're school counseling, they would be doing a topic in that area, or administration. Most of our students are in a teaching capacity, many of them are. So the majority of our capstones are done in a regular or a special education school classroom. But that's not to say that students don't do other variations of it. As long as the capstone is completed at an educational site, then it fits our project. So I'm going to walk you through what they complete. Louder? Oh, wonderful. I'll try. I'll walk you through what they complete in each of the 8 weeks. So we have the 580, 581. It's educational research, methods, and analysis. Is that better? Online? Okay. Our projects are qualitative research. We don't put our students through any quantitative statistics type courses. So they are strictly qualitative research projects. Not to say that there isn't a basic type of statistics in there. Real basic, meaning percentages, averages, that kind of a thing. So they are qualitative. They're collaborative, so it doesn't matter what delivery that they are taking their coursework, if it's blended, if it's online, asynchronous, synchronous online, or face-to-face, all of those projects will be a collaborative group of 2 to 3 students, so no more, no less. We don't have more than 3 students, but we have had instances where there's 1 student working on a project. Those are special projects that need to get approval by the associate dean. And just an example, I had a student in one of our Ed Tech 580 courses recently who works at the district office. He doesn't have his own classroom, but the district was really excited about him building a training or professional development in Blackboard that he can utilize with his staff, and they wanted him to do this for his capstone. He was excited about it. He put it out to his classmates, very small group of 7 or 8 students. None of them were interested in that. They all worked in a classroom. They wanted something that would be directly applicable to their students. So he really pushed, he was very persistent, which I liked, and we did approve him to do an individual project. This is also a student who's extremely capable of completing an individual project. And that's the main reason why we would turn down individual projects, is that they need that support. And they need to learn from the collaborative group. So that's just an example, but they're very rare if we do an individual project. So then we have the action research. So a lot of our students don't realize that if they're teachers in the classroom or they're administrators, they do action research on a daily basis. They reflect on their practice, they assess their students, they see that some of them are getting them, some of them are getting the concepts, some are not getting the concepts, and they step back and think, what do I do to make sure these students, all 100% of them, get it? That's action research. When you think of a way, you implement, you make that action happen, and you assess if it worked. The difference between what they're doing every day in their classroom and what they'll be doing for their project, and the difference between the term is research, is that research documents it, right? They might not be documenting it in the classroom, but they're still going through the steps of action research on a daily basis. So that's how I try to get my students to understand this isn't scary, this isn't new, you do it daily. You're just writing it down. So we have one intervention within the small group, and I'll talk a little bit more about that to come. The 580, 581 courses, the students complete chapters 1, 2, and 3 of their proposal. So they're proposing what their research will be when they get to 605. So the chapter 1's problem and purpose statement, they include their research questions in that. The chapter 2 is a review of the literature. Chapter 3 are their methods. Okay, and I'll get very detailed with each chapter so everyone understands. They also complete the institutional review board application in 580, 581. They do that towards the end once they have chapters 1, 2, and most of chapter 3 written, so they know their methods. So our projects are designed, and we advise students to design the projects so they fall under an exempt review. Exempt meaning it goes through exempt IRB because it is a typical, regular, everyday practice that they would be doing, just like I had discussed. There is nothing out of the ordinary that puts participants at a particular risk or a significant risk. It's very minimal to no risk projects. So they will apply for exempt IRB review, and typically by the time they start 605 or even by the end of 580, that is approved and they can implement their study in 605. Okay, so moving on to 605, we start now with our researcher roles. They're in groups of 2 to 3, and everyone, just like cooperative group learning, has a role, and they have tasks for that role. We have one intervention expert. That's the person that will use their classroom, their school site, get administrator consent to have the research done at that site, and they will implement the intervention. Then the other 1 or 2 students in that group will be the data analysis experts, as we call them. They will be doing constant collaboration with that interventionist, meeting all the time to understand the data that's coming in, constant analysis and discussing it, and reflection all the way through between the whole group. Okay? So those are the roles. We have in 605 the implementation of the research. It includes the intervention being implemented, collecting data, continuous reflection and collaboration, as I just discussed. Chapters 1 through 4 of the final written project will be completed, and then they have an oral presentation, kind of like a defense of their thesis at the end, week 8. So I'll get to more detail, as kind of a summary of what I'm going to be talking about. In 580, 581, they complete chapter 1. And please stop me if online has questions, or if you have questions, just raise your hand. I'm happy to answer questions along the way. Chapter 1, they first reflect on their problem. They have a group of, say, English language learners, and they're not understanding the concepts in their history lesson. And they're using a text, and they're using primary source documents, and they're just not getting it. There's a problem. How do I get these students to understand my concepts? Okay, so they reflect. The teacher reflects on this problem and their purpose. They want them to succeed academically. They want them to learn that history lesson. Okay, so that's the purpose for solving the problem. They may also see that they're just not engaged. They don't get it, they're not interested, so they kind of clock out, and they're not engaged and motivated to learn the information, okay? Then we have a review of the literature on the problem and potential solutions. So within the chapter 1, they do already dig into the literature and find out what do the experts say about this problem out in the field. What have they done? What's research-based practices that I can look at that will assist my students and that I can implement that may make an impact on their academic skills and their motivation and engagement, okay? Then they also in chapter 1 state their initial intervention ideas. Now at this stage, sometimes it's not even in stone what they're gonna do. They may say, okay, I just went to this in-service, I learned these common core strategies, and I'm gonna implement closed reading strategies in my history classes. And we're gonna really get deep into that. I haven't used it yet. That's something that needs to be known. It can't be something they've used already because the data won't be significant. So they want to make sure it's measurable. So they kind of list in their chapter 1 their initial ideas of what they're going to do for their intervention. And then the literature, as they get into it, will confirm if that's the intervention that they will stick with. And it's supported by the literature. They'll discuss their desired outcomes. They'll formulate their research questions. So, an example of a research question. And again, research questions are not real cut and dry, easy, simple questions. Sometimes they're kind of long and bulky because you want them to be very detailed. And Will, I might pick on you to give some examples too, if you could think of some. Or maybe T. Or I'm trying to see if you can think of maybe a project that you've had that you could. But for instance, like the example that I just gave you, a research question may be something like, what impact will closed reading skills have on my 8th grade students' academic skills in social studies?
I was going to say mine is, what impact will the flipped delivery model of instruction support my Math 1A class?
Right. So you have the intervention that you discussed. You have what you're looking at to improve on your academic skills. You have your grade level. You might even have a participant set like English language learners or special education or GATE students. It's very detailed. You know exactly what that project's going to be just from one sentence. So then a secondary sentence might look at motivation and engagement. It might be the same exact question with those 2 items plugged in. What impact will closed reading skills have on my 8th grade students' engagement and motivation in social studies? Okay, so that's a secondary.
Kelly, I also would think that the secondary could be my GATE students, my English language learning students.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. They might look at a certain participant group in that effort. Yes, very good. Thank you for being my guinea pig with that. Questions? Okay. And then they define the educational terminology. I always tell students, don't assume everyone knows what you're talking about. If your next door neighbor was reading your paper, would they know what you meant by ELL, SEDI, all these wonderful acronyms that we use on a daily basis? Explain it, define it, and use credible, relevant literature to cite the definition. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 1, honestly, is approximately 5 pages. It's not real long because it's very detailed with what your problem is, what your purpose is to solve that problem, what your initial ideas are to implement an intervention to solve it, and here's your definitions and research questions.
Done?
Yes?
For most of our students, as for those of you that haven't taught this class yet, this is the first time that they're doing actual research, and so they're very much scared about this process. One of my questions is, could those bullet points just be used for chapter 1? Of course, without the bullet points, but
Right, so we have a writing template, and it actually puts the headings in for them. And basically what I used to do my PowerPoint was the rubric. Exactly what they need to include in their research projects. So these are rubric criteria also. But yes, we do advise them to use the writing template, which starts with a problem, and then they follow the rubric criteria under that problem. And then the purpose, and then the research questions, and the definitions. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. Question? Oh.
So back a little bit earlier, this is about how much does that
to give you an idea of how we get our students to measure something such as motivation and engagement. Yeah, thank you. So then the chapter 2 we'll move on to. Again, I said that we do get them started on the chapter 1 in the beginning because they need to kind of frame their project, but they also need the chapter 2. So they're really working on both at once so they can get the chapter 1 well defined and understand what the experts are saying and research says to support what they've done in their chapter 1. Okay? So their chapter 2, what do the various experts say in the field? Okay, so the number one thing we have them do in a literature review is synthesize the literature. A lot of times, Barbara, where is Barbara? I think you mentioned this some years ago. You said a lot of times students do literature reviews and they have this boxcar method. That was the term you came up with. And they'll take an article and they'll summarize it and they'll cite. And then the second paragraph, it's another article and they'll cite. That's not synthesizing, that's just summarizing some articles and putting citation to it. We want them to really take a bunch of articles, we require 20 to 30 by the end, or the chapter 2 only. Take a bunch of articles, put them in piles. How are they similar? How are they different? What's the arguments against one another? How do they support? How do they agree? And then they synthesize that. So we have to kind of help them with their writing skills, which will probably be a capstone connection that Catherine will talk about, to understand how to actually synthesize. Okay, so Peterson 2017 argued, and Albrecht 2016 contended, same idea and concept, both of us agreeing, but we're giving that credit to both, and it's found in various areas. So we want to make sure they understand how to synthesize. Okay, so to do that, we make sure they are using relevant, credible, and current journal articles. They can use textbooks. A lot of times, though, we tell them if they're textbooks, make sure they're current, relevant, and credible. Because not all textbooks are considered current, relevant, and credible. Okay, so we really do push them to use the library. That's why we have that library orientation now in the very beginning of their program. And they'll also take a library orientation during the 580, 581 courses to refresh their skills and looking for those journal articles during that research phase. So we want to make sure that their seminal works, they're looking at the theorists and researchers. Louder?
No.
Oh, okay.
Comment. You're done.
Oh, comment. Go ahead.
Okay, Lori Hoffman said, have your students use the Writing Center in earlier courses so they get used to the feedback they provide. It really helps with 58605.
Great comment.
Use
Thank
the
you,
Writing
Lori. Yes. Of course that came from Lori. Thank you. She's right. I mean, that'll probably be something Catherine mentions as well, but using the Writing Center, using Grammarly, in 580 and 605, we do tell students, submit your chapters one by one to Grammarly. And if we have a student that struggles, I require them to use the Writing Center, and then they send me a report so I can make sure that they have made those revisions according to the report. And they can also send you a Grammarly report as well to make sure that that writing is consistent with graduate level writing. So great feedback on that. Thanks, Lori. Okay, so using the synthesis of literature with seminal works, theorists, researchers in the field, paraphrasing and crediting sources. Also, another thing that students think that they can do is quote everything. You have pages and pages of block quotes all the way down your paper. Well, I say if you can't put that in your own words because it'll change the meaning, then yes, quote it. But I bet you can put it in your own words. Most of what they're writing about can be paraphrased. So we really want them to not copy-paste other people's work and cite it correctly and then they're safe with that. We want them to really understand what they're coming up with in the concept and put it in their own words to do so. That's a skill that they need to learn across the whole program when they're taking all of their coursework.
Hold on. We're going to check sound here. Hold the plug on the sound on that computer.
Nobody's like in the past. Nobody's here. I don't know what to do.
Okay. Log out of Collaborate is what we need to do. That's what's doing it.
I'm trying to figure this out. I love you.
Log
You're
out
awesome. I
Collaborate.
love you.
Okay. Sign out.
How are we feeling right now? Get your face.
Now we need a microphone, handheld.
Okay.
Now we're still getting the sound. Did we unplug the headphone thing on there?
What headphone?
Here it goes.
Okay.
Okay.
Testing.
Do we have the lapel microphone? There, Barb, can you give that to them and try that? We're still picking up sound though.
Thanks for your patience.
Right?
Testing.
Erin's going to sing a song. She has a beautiful voice.
And Google Hangout is closed up on there, right?
You want me to completely go out of this?
That's not the problem. Can you untick capture audio on that? Where it says capture audio, can you untick that? Turn that back on. Keep going without a mic like we were doing. Click that back on. It's coming from somewhere back here. I'm afraid it's the camera, but the camera says it's not picking up sound. So I don't know. I can't turn off. We're going to proceed.
Yeah, they said the mic sound was fine when there was no mic.
Yeah, we're going to
Moving right along. So, in the literature review, they discussed the problem as seen in the field. They acknowledge the problem. Now, a lot of times students also want to put their opinion in the literature review and discuss what they think. But we tell them this is the one area that you don't do that. You want to make sure that the researchers in the field, the literature is speaking to support what you've said in your chapters 1, 3, and 4. Okay, so acknowledge the problem as seen by the experts, perhaps the historical background of the problem, the participants of the study. So you might even look into English language learners or beginning readers or whatever it might be you're looking at, your focus, to understand practices they've used that have worked for those populations. Those are just some examples of some items they would look at in the lit review. And then research-based solutions and results. So the action, look into the interventions that have been tried and what works, and that kind of funnels into what you eventually will use, which is your intervention. And that is also pieces of literature that you will use to support your chapter 1 problem and purpose and the intervention you have there. So literature review is a really important piece. It is not a typical lit review you'd see in a doctoral program. We always say that our projects within a 16-week period will be exposure to research. They want to understand and learn what a research project looks like, how to do some of the basic principles of each of those chapters if they were to go into a doctoral program, but it really isn't a full-blown research project that would take much longer than 16 weeks. So the lit review portion, we say, is approximately 6 pages per student. So if you have a group of 2, you have at least a 12-page lit review by the end of 605. And 3 students would be 18 pages. Those are averages and minimums that we want them to write on. So that's not very much. We know in other classes, they write 6-page papers just on one assignment. So that's not a whole lot to ask, right?
One of the things that some of my students said, there was one student who was writing about Ed Son, and for their lit review, they didn't mention Skinner. And I said, well, where's Skinner in all the stuff, since he was one of the biggest people within Ed Psych, and what they were saying was that, well, in a previous class, I was told not to go 10 years back, or go from 10 years back on forward. So those are those types of things that we, as the professionals, need to understand, is that there's seminal work that needs to be in there. So at times there may be a little bit of research on our end just to find out who the big names were within that body of work. So once I shared that, well, without what's going on now, it's, without Skinner, we wouldn't be where we're doing blah, 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 blah. And so I really needed to let all of my candidates know that there's seminal work that's out there that's needed within the lit review.
Thank you. That's an excellent point, because I do emphasize on here that their literature should have current, relevant, and credible references. And we do say 5 years, but I mean, for my dissertation, I had works from 1800s. I mean, that was how, we go back to all that. So it is definitely something that you would advise your students on. You need to look at the historical background on this, and you might want to pull the primary sources here that may be 100 or so years old. And that's completely fine. It's just those students that you see 1990, and it's all throughout the paper, and you're thinking, pull some new stuff up. We need to see what's going on now. What works for today's population. So thanks, Fred. Great point. Okay, so chapter 3. I'm going to try to hurry because I know I've taken a while so far. Chapter 3 is a bigger portion of what they're going to be writing on, with a lot of meat involved in this. So they'll talk about their setting. All of this is anonymous, so they might use very broad terms. A high school in Northern California. I mean, not anything county-specific, city-specific. We want to maintain everything is anonymous. You protect your identity throughout. We'll talk about the demographics, a region of broad terms, student performance data. We'll talk about the participants in broad term as well. You will use pseudonyms or numbers for the students so you don't reveal their true identity. You can give age, grade level, achievement data. The role of the researchers, I will talk a little bit more in depth about this, but it's basically the one intervention expert and the 1 to 2 data analysis experts. Then the intervention plan is the biggest part of the chapter 3. I tell them, think in terms of subplans. If I were to go because you were sick one day and I needed to implement your intervention, how do I do it? I've never taught 8th grade. How do I do that? And so they need to be very detailed with how I do that in their intervention plan. They give timelines, the detailed steps, and they also support the practices in this intervention plan with the literature again. Then the data collection. We make sure that they use triangulation, meaning they have multiple forms of data. One required piece of data that we make them do in 605 is a reflection journal, a researcher reflection journal. Because action research is all about reflecting on our practices. What I needed to think about to get it started, what I'm thinking about and reflecting on as I'm doing it, and how am I going to improve it once I'm done with this project if I continue with it. So they're always reflecting and journaling those reflections. That is a required piece that they'll use. And then other pieces, and this came, I think Sue Ellen asked the question, how do I measure certain things like motivation and engagement. With qualitative methods, we have them do such things they can choose. They can do a survey, but if they do a survey and it's a Likert scale, which would give them quantitative data, add an open-ended piece to it. Can you explain this? Can you provide detail to this? There's your qualitative piece in that survey, right? Interviews. Interview all of your participants or some of your participants within that set. That is going to be kind of an open-ended, informal type of interview. And I say informal only because, in my opinion, if it's too formal, it kind of takes away from the ethical practices. It has to be almost like a comfortable conversation that you're having. Make it informal. You'll also get more out of your participants when it is informal because it's a conversation. Baseline data. You can grab assessments, anything that you have that kind of shows where they're at before you started any of it. And let's see, I did open-ended surveys, observations. So observations are good. The interviews, observations, that is something that you could use to see, are my students engaged? Have they become motivated since we implemented this new project? I see a lot of really neat results when people have never used project-based learning, and all of a sudden they've implemented it, and you get a whole new world of students open up to learning, because now they understand and can learn in that method. So observing that and having an observation journal would be a way to capture that. And then assessments and student artifacts are other ways of triangulating to see if my research questions have been answered by these various methods that I've implemented. Any questions about chapter 3? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not done with chapter 3. So quickly, ethical research practices. So this is what I was talking about too. Going into ethical practices on gathering your data. Also making sure that you have different types of validity and how you have incorporated those. I just show you a few here. One of the ways that we, can you see that? It's small. One of the ways that we can maintain that we have validity is that we disseminate the research. We require them in 605 to do an oral presentation. They are teaching others about their research. Peer debriefings, talking to their peers in class, doing peer reviews. Member checks. You have an interview and you transcribed your data and you take it back to the participant and say, did I get this right? Is this what you meant? You do a member check. These are all ethical practices to incorporate and state that you are doing in your project. The validity justifies the practices and it also will align with the research questions. And then of course the confidentiality and informed consent. This piece right here is what we have them build on, especially for their IRB application, to make sure that the site administrator is going to approve the project, parents will consent, if they're adult participants, they will consent to written consent form. Their data management, are you going to keep it in a locked file? Are you going to destroy it after a certain amount of time? And maintaining confidentiality. Okay, and then when they get into 605, so that's all 580 in 8 weeks. It's a lot. We have the 2 to 3 students in the research groups. We have the intervention expert who is in charge of, is one student researcher in charge of implementing the intervention at one school site, and you have one set of participants. Because it's qualitative, a lot of times students start these projects and think, I'm going to do my whole school. My school only has 2,000 students in the high school I teach at. Well, that's a lot of qualitative data and transcription you're going to be doing in 8 weeks. So we tell them, no, let's size that back. How about one classroom? In fact, how about a portion of that one classroom? 10 students? That's even a lot for qualitative data. My dissertation, I had 6 participants, and it was 250 pages. It was a lot to transcribe. So qualitative data is all about talking in detail about the experiences and the skills that you're observing. So it's not like quant where you are putting, you need bigger numbers to have more significance. Tracy?
Yeah, one of the things I was going to make a suggestion to that I've always done is even outside of these 2 researcher roles, I always have the students decide who's going to be the writer. Because at the end of the capstone, it's always the most challenging to get that one voice and to really be seamless. And so I always encourage them at this point, who's the best writer on your team. Make that person be, responsible for being the writer, and make sure that they're bringing it all together. It's really, really helpful.
That's a good idea. We do have them utilize Google Docs for the collaboration of the text. So a writer could get on there and they could write the text, and then others can get on and proofread and make adjustments. But then we have them copy and paste that text into a Word document, because Google Docs isn't very good with maintaining large amount of page numbers. So we need to use, and the formatting, it kind of gets skewed. So we do have them eventually submit it in a Word document and then a PDF, the final version. But Google Docs is fantastic for especially that instance where you have a writer and the other group members need to be a part of it for proofreading or adding to it. So thank you. And then we have the data analysis experts. They will continuously collaborate with that intervention expert, continuously analyze the data, not leave it to the end. The interventions are typically 3 to 4 weeks of that 8 weeks. A lot of times if they have IRB approval, they will start week 1. Usually week 2, because week 1 they're prepping everything. Week 2 they'll start the implementation of the intervention, gather data, spend maybe 4 weeks, they're in about week 5, and they start putting it all together. Data analysis experts are usually in charge of making sure that proposal is no longer a proposal, and those chapters 1 through 3 now are in past tense. They are including everything that was actually done now that it's done, and they'll do the revisions that the academic advisor or the capstone advisor has recommended. Okay, I know I'm running with time. What's wrong? It's not usually signaling. I know, exactly. Everyone's like, whoa. Implementing action research. Okay, so this is after the IRB. They collect baseline data, implement the intervention, collect the qualitative data, they write the chapter 4 during 605, they finalize the full written project, which is submitted week 8, and then they also will disseminate the research findings in that oral presentation week 8. Chapter 4, it's a little bit of what I said already, triangulates those different research methods for the findings and discussions. They talk about their conclusions, all aligned to the research questions, answering those questions, and the recommendations for future research. That journal that they do, the reflection journal, is really good for the recommendations for future research piece as they're journaling how it went and what they would change up. So the oral presentation, we give them a little bit of different options depending on the delivery. Face-to-face with blended students, since they meet face-to-face week 8, they are required to attend week 8, and they will do a 15 to 20 minute oral presentation with a slideshow of their entire project. Okay, so they'll do the brief summary of chapters 1 through 3, talk about their findings and conclusion, and that's the end of the requirements. The oral presentation is, like I said, it's a defense, so they do have to do that to complete the capstone and pass it. Online students actually have 2 options because we have 2 different deliveries in online. CNI is an asynchronous program, so they do not meet face-to-face in live virtual sessions. They have 2 options in that case. They can present to a group of educators at their school site, and they can videotape themselves presenting, or they can attend the week 8 live synchronous session, which our asynchronous CNI teachers do, and they can present in front of their capstone advisor and their peers. I'm done. Sorry, that was long. Longer than I thought it would be.
Are you going to share those slides with us so we can go back and have them as a reference point?
Yes, I already have it filed in the Resource Center, and then there's a professional development folder in there, and it's filed in there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, how many of you are school administrators or in charge of school assemblies, things like that? Have been in the past? Okay, so you know all about this. Okay, so we're going to take a 5-minute break at the most because we're going to switch over transition. We're not afraid of technology. We're going to keep on going. We're not going to be deterred. We're going to switch over to Blackboard Collaborate for our next 2 presentations, and we want to do that seamlessly. So 5-minute break, no longer. Please be back and start up in 5 minutes. Thanks.
We're on break.
Hi, welcome. Oh, oh, okay. I, hello, I see Ron and I see Kelly. Remember that old show when you're looking through the magic mirror? That's how I feel right now. Can you hear me now? Hello, I see Ron and I see Kelly. Remember that old show when you're looking through the magic mirror? The problem is it's very, very delayed. Yeah, it's taking, yeah, it's about a 20-second delay, which is really, really weird. But yes, I hear you perfectly.
Okay. If you're new with this, it's important you know what the capstone in it is and how it is taught. But there's connections to capstone all the way through the program. And that's where you can help as an instructor in any class you're teaching. And so this next part is going to be presented by Dr. Catherine Webb, and she's going to talk to us about capstone connections and other courses. So Catherine, take it away. Karen, it's time to sing. Okay. There you go.
Hi, everybody. It's so wonderful to see so many of my colleagues online. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so hopefully this won't be too awkward for everybody because there's about a 20-second delay, so I'll do my best. So if you do need to ask a question, let's just reserve those for the very end so we don't have any strange delay and talking over everybody. But I wanted to say that it's wonderful to be able to be here and to talk to you about something that I really feel passionate about, and that's the capstone connection. A couple years ago, we met with a team to talk about the capstone project, and we really felt, based on feedback, that students were not getting a capstone experience throughout their program, but rather learning about the capstone either the class of or a class beforehand. So we really wanted to avoid that problem.
Hi, Catherine. Can you stop talking just for a minute?
Students to learn about the capstone experience throughout their entire program, whether they were in the CNI program.
We need to pause and fix the sound again. Sorry. Have her do some tests, please.
Can you hear me, Barb? I'm going to just continue to talk until you tell me not to. So I'm talking. Okay, I'll just keep talking. Will I need to start over or will I continue from where I was at? I'm so sorry. All right, I'll just keep talking. Fortunately, I don't have 30 minutes to talk, so hopefully we won't get too behind in the schedule. And Helen's devotion this morning.
What a warning that.
That's okay. That's all right. I'm not exactly sure what I should talk about then. suppose I could sing a song, but I don't think anybody would want to hear that. So I miss all of you, and it was fun to see you for the short time that I saw you. I saw Kelly and Ron and Sandy. Oh, so sweet. I miss all of you.
Everybody wants to know
Oh,
about.
I'm here. No. Okay, great. Great. I did walk away. I just can't see down at. Great. I did walk away. I just can't see down at. What happened with the sound? I'm here. No. I did walk away. I just can't see down at. I did walk away. I just can't see down at. Now that I'm 40, I needed to have some glasses to read the screen a little bit more. But Utah is great. It's beautiful. It's incredibly cold. And I find myself just bundling up. 40, I needed to have some glasses to read the screen a little bit more. But Utah is great. It's beautiful. It's incredibly cold. And I find myself just bundling up.
We have her online. If everybody would just go online and listen to her. But we lost her on the speakers, right? Is she still talking?
No, I think she stopped because it was
Okay.
it's taking.
I'm getting double echo also.
Let's go forward. No, let's go forward.
I'm still here. Can you all hear me? I'm getting double echo also.
Just tell her to go. Yes. Okay, I think I heard to just continue on from where I was at. So as I mentioned about the capstone and the capstone connection, we met and we really wanted that capstone experience to be through. I think I heard to just continue on from where I was at. So as I mentioned about to just continue to throughout the program, we met and we really wanted that capstone experience to be through. To just continue to throughout the program. Okay, I just turned off the live stream, so I'm hoping that will help with the delay. So I apologize with all of that, and hopefully we will not have any more sound issues. And after meeting with our team of instructors, we felt that there was a way to make connections in every single course, whether it was MAED, whether it was, curriculum and instruction, admin, ed tech, or the counseling program. So we decided to sit down and just use one particular class as a pilot to see how it would work. And we went through the syllabus, we looked at the capstone rubric, and we started making these connections. And if any of you are familiar with the backwards by design, Wiggins and McTeague, they argue that you can't really start planning how you're going to teach until you know exactly what you want your students to learn. And they reinforce the idea that teaching is a means to an end. So with that being said, we started with the capstone rubric. And we always want to start with the rubric because, again, we want to look at what our end is. And the capstone truly is a culminating activity for the entire MAED program. So looking at the capstone rubric, we went through chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, of course, and then we started to make connections to the course content.
I'm pulling up now the capstone rubric, and this is the first page of the rubric. And there's 6 pages here, so I'm going to go through it kind of quickly. But as an educator and wanting our students to be able to culminate at the end of the program, we really want to take a look at the capstone rubric and look at the words and phrases and the content and the themes that are present within the rubric and incorporate those into the content of each of our courses. So whether you're in CNI or EdTech or admin or our school counseling program, it doesn't matter what program you're in. All of these connections can be made throughout the program. Something as simple as asking a student to find an article or look up a journal and to present. All of those can be connected to the rubric. But what we really wanted our students to do is to speak the same language, so that when they got to the end of their program, the capstone was not a completely new activity, idea, phrase. We wanted them to be able to continue with that language throughout the program, so when they got to the capstone project, it wasn't anxiety-ridden. Many of the students that I'm currently teaching right now, one of our discussion board questions is, how well do you feel prepared for your capstone experience? And without any hesitation, all of them said, I felt prepared throughout this program because we have been led to this point with our other activities, specifically our signature assignments. So I teach in the CNI, and we went through all of our syllabus and made those connections with the capstone connection. And when you look at the rubric and you look at words and ideas and phrases as intervention and purpose and theory and ethics, all of these are listed here. So in chapter 1, some of the ideas we pulled out of there were really main terms, which is listed down at the bottom, 1.9, the main terms and using citations to support them. In any of the courses that you're teaching, students are going to come across new terms, and they're going to have to be able to explain them and elaborate on them. And then you really want them to support them with citations. This is directly linked right to the rubric. In chapter 2 of the capstone experience, and I know Kelly went into a lot more detail on the specific chapters, I'm just focusing here on the rubric. But within the rubric for chapter 2 especially, chapter 2 seems to be one of the most difficult chapters for any student to be able to write and to complete, because the idea of synthesizing the literature, comparing and contrasting and making connections is difficult for our students to do. So if we start early in the program and exposing them to different literature, exposing them to the task of synthesizing and paraphrasing versus summarizing, our students are going to be much more prepared when they get to the end of their program. In chapter 3 with the methodology, students are asked to describe the setting and participants and what the intervention plan is. As Kelly mentioned, the intervention plan needs to be so incredibly detailed that if you were a sub going into the classroom, you'd be able to replicate that particular type of activity. So when we start talking in our classes now about what an intervention looks like or what other interventions have taken place, we talk about the problem of practice. As an educator, we all have problems within our practice, and that's where this intervention comes in. In most of our courses, we talk about problems of practice, and these are perfect as discussion points for a topic for a capstone experience. So after going through and really looking at the rubric and identifying the different areas that are related and closely linked to our particular courses that we teach, we can start drawing those connections and bringing those connections to light in our own courses. Now, most of the syllabus changes are done by subject matter experts, so I'm not suggesting that you go in and you change the syllabus. But what I am suggesting is as you teach your courses and you start identifying specific areas that could be linked with the capstone experience, to make that a very explicit and intentional conversation with your students. Let them know what the capstone is, and that's another reason why we're bringing this to discussion tonight, because even if you, whether or not you teach the capstone, there are 22 instructors right now who are teaching a capstone course, and there are many other instructors who are teaching other courses, many more than that. So it's all of our responsibility to bring this conversation to our students in all of the classes that we teach, so they're comfortable with writing and producing a references page, that they're comfortable in talking about methodology, discussing some of those terms that may be within a rubric, that if you don't have that conversation with them, they're going to come to the capstone courses, the 580 or 605 courses, and express that anxiety. So I'm going to jump back to our PowerPoint here and continue. Go back here. So hopefully now you could all see the second page of the PowerPoint. As I mentioned, we're going to start here. We're going to start and we're going to look at chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as I mentioned, with Wiggins and McTeague, we want to start with the end result. And of course, this rubric is the ultimate end result, the culminating portion of their master's program. Then, the next step is to take a look at the syllabus and the assignments. As I mentioned, every syllabus and each specific assignment have connections to the rubric. Look specifically at the signature assignment, because the signature assignment is typically a culmination of that particular course. And again, those key phrases, those terms will come out there, and those connections will be able to be made easily. Making connections includes introducing research terms, discussing terms like data, baseline data, reviewing what that looks like, and as your students research or pull up literature, you could ask them to identify, was there baseline data that was collected? What is the author's point? Is there a problem of practice that this particular author is trying to research? Discuss words like protocol, interview, surveys, questionnaires. As Kelly mentioned before, reflection is a very important part of the capstone experience. And within the capstone experience, students are asked to produce a reflection journal. As in many of our courses, we are asking our students to reflect on specific content. And even in some of our courses, we're asking our students to present a reflection journal. In doing so, they are making those capstone connections. As I mentioned, and Kelly also mentioned, the importance of synthesis. Our students are so familiar with summarizing, but the idea of paraphrasing or synthesizing literature causes students to feel a sense of anxiety. They haven't had an opportunity to practice this much. So my recommendation to each of our instructors, challenge your students to synthesize the literature, to draw conclusions, to make connections, to compare and to contrast. So any opportunity you have, if you're presenting literature in the classroom, to ask students, okay, let's talk about this a little bit. How could we synthesize this? What other authors or experts in the field of education compare or contrast with this point of view? We've all been stressing the importance of APA 6th edition to our students. Again, remind them the purpose of this is to become an expert in APA by the time they end their master's program with the capstone experience. Citations need to be correct. Students need to write an APA and be able to produce something that is of a quality of error-free. Encourage students to discuss theory and a theoretical framework. Now, the theoretical framework isn't discussed in detail in the master's program, but if they continue on to earn their terminal degree, theoretical framework will be discussed more in detail. But this is a perfect opportunity to introduce theoretical frameworks, to talk about the different theories. If students are excited
and interested in pursuing motivation for their capstone experience, you could start discussing motivation theory early on and sharing with them any types of books or additional materials that you know would complement this particular experience. Research topics. Students are talking about topics in every single course that we teach. Leadership courses, courses on ethics and diversity and on development. All of those can be part of a capstone experience if they choose that to be their research topic. So encourage your students to take notes, to add to their literature throughout their experience so that they will have a pretty well-developed reference list when they get into their capstone course. If they're very interested about leadership theory and the different types of leadership, transactional versus transformational, and that is a focus they want to continue, everything that you discuss in your class that relates to that, remind them to start a reference list so they could take it with them directly into their capstone. Terms like participants and setting and intervention and validity, all of those terms, again, are terms that you can reinforce in the course that you're currently teaching. I'm going to pull up another document that has some examples of ways that we have made capstone connections within our specific syllabus. What I'm sharing now is just a document that I put together of a couple different courses so I could share with you how these capstone connections have been made. In one course, EDU 542, it's on school, community, and diverse family structures. Simply, this particular assignment is a literature exploration. It's an individual analysis paper. So not being one who may have designed this course, just coming in to teach it, as many of you are, you may look at this and say, okay, wow, literature and analysis. Those are two key words that I just saw in our capstone rubric. If this connection was not already here, you simply can draw this into your class, bring this out, and start having a conversation about what literature actually is. How do you analyze a paper? In this particular case, we made a capstone connection. You can see the little puzzle pieces over on the left-hand side. And the way to incorporate a capstone connection into your course could be as simple as a conversation with your students about different ideas that can be brought and connected between the capstone rubric and your current class, or it could be something a little bit more planned out as it is here. Here we are telling our students with the capstone connection in 580, you are going to have to be designing, implementing, and writing your collaborative capstone project. And in order to prepare you for that, we're asking you to research scholarly journal articles, peer-reviewed articles. And then from that, we're asking you to look at this topic. Search for articles, read abstracts, findings, conclusions. All of that is very specific to the capstone. And then it's asking students to write an individual paper analyzing that paper. Analyzing this paper includes paraphrasing. And then it goes into a specific explanation of what paraphrasing is. Analyzing the paper, including in-text citations and references using the APA 6th edition format. And as it continues, it even takes it a little bit more in depth, reminding students to select problems and issues, and then to include some additional information on the school setting. And it's explaining that this is the exact same process you're going to have to go through when you reach your collaborative action research. So if a student had this particular course at the beginning of their program, they would have been introduced already to the capstone project, and they would already have some words that they're already familiar with: peer-reviewed, scholarly journal articles, analyzing, and paraphrasing. As I move down to an additional assignment down here at the bottom, this is a culturally responsive group presentation. And in this particular case, students are to identify a topic, a priority, an area of need. And when we talk about priorities and area of need, it goes directly back to our capstone experience. You're looking at the problem of practice, and this is going to prepare you for your capstone also. Another couple examples. I know I'm going to need to wrap this up pretty quickly, but another couple examples. If you're looking at down here at the bottom, this is the exact same part of the same assignment, but it says the process of providing enough detail so others could duplicate the activity in this assignment. This is exactly as Kelly had mentioned about the intervention, making sure that they have enough detail so that somebody else could replicate it if they want. So this is just one example in one syllabus of ways that the capstone connection was made. A couple more examples might be in the form of a signature assignment. I'm going to try and blow this up a little bit. Another way, and all of these syllabuses or syllabi are available on the Resource Center. So if you want to take a look at any of them, feel free to go on in and look for in the CNI, there's the little puzzle piece or an asterisk that identifies capstone connections. And if you're interested in continuing these capstone connections throughout your courses, feel free to replicate it. Basically, we just take the words directly from and incorporate it into the assignments that we have for our students to complete. This here is a signature assignment, and the capstone connection is actually a culmination of many parts of the capstone, identifying specific things like, again, identifying a problem. I'm going to go to the next page, but you can see it here down at the bottom. The capstone connection here is identifying a priority or need again, and that relates directly to Chapter 1, and then Chapter 3, the setting and the participant. In another course, this one here is EDU 515. The capstone connection here is made through the reading reflection journal. As I mentioned, reflection journal is part of the capstone. In this particular class, the reading reflection journal is introduced so students can continue that process. And then it goes into detail specifically about what paraphrasing means and what a quotation is and how to teach that process, beginning to synthesize the information. 515 is one of the very first courses your students will take in the MAED program for CNI. And if they're already introduced to synthesis in their first class, they're going to be better prepared for their literature review when they get to their final capstone experience. So with that, I just want to close and encourage you all to please introduce capstone terminology. Share with your students the different terms so that they are prepared and they feel confident going into their capstone. Students have so much anxiety coming into their capstone, and if they are better prepared and they feel confident, then they are going to be more successful in their program. So if you have any questions, please ask. Please don't hesitate to ask. We're all here and excited to help you and excited to share the capstone with our students throughout the program.
Thanks, Catherine, so much. I appreciate it. I know. Catherine, I said thank you if you're there. Okay, we have one more presentation this evening. Barb Howard and Ashley Andrew are going to present their little piece on Blackboard Collaborate.
Do I need a mic, Tim? Yes, I do. Is this okay if I use this one? All right, so if you guys thought that was fun, you're really going to love this one. All right, bye, Kat. All right, so we're going to get rid of Kat's presentation, and we are going to, Ashley, can you hear us? Ashley, can you hear us? Ashley? Yep, there she is. All right, we're going to make Ashley big. Oopsie daisy. So everybody else needs to turn off their microphones who are in our classroom so that Ashley can make noise and get big. Go ahead, Ashley. Okay. Ooh.
All right, I'm here. Hopefully you can hear me.
Can you hear us? All right, everybody say hi to Ashley.
Yes.
All right. So I'm Barbara Howard, and that's Ashley right there, the little tiny one in the corner. And we're going to tag team this presentation because what we want to do is share with you how to actually host a class in Blackboard Collaborate. And then we actually have a topic, which is communication tips, online grading, and Blackboard Collaborate. And so I'm going to turn this over to Ashley.
All right, everyone, good to be with you here this evening. One of the first things I'd like to just highlight for all of you are some communication tips and or requests that we've received from students in their student evaluations over the past few semesters or years. We'll also make this PowerPoint available to all of you in our MAED resource folder so you can check back and reference it from time to time as you see fit. So just a couple tips in terms of your communication. First and foremost, please try your best to provide timely and detailed feedback. As you know, as our current instructors, the 8-week terms move quickly. And so responding to emails and student questions within 24 hours during the work week is definitely recommended. I also recommend to develop a routine and stick to it. This not only helps the students in planning out their schedules, but also will hopefully help you develop a routine during the 8-week term. This is just an example used by an instructor or two that I know of. On Monday, they typically post a video announcement reviewing key ideas from the last week, maybe major themes that popped up on the discussion board, highlighting some key areas of interest, or even correcting some discussions that maybe got a bit off course. It's also a good opportunity to preview the major concepts coming in the week to come. On Tuesday, they usually post in the Blackboard announcement forum a post to notify the class that grades are updated, and also a reminder to post their discussion board responses for those of you that have weekly or bi-weekly discussion board. And then, throughout, oftentimes emails again, answering student questions, but usually towards the end of the week, kind of an end of the week wrap up, final reminders if there's assignments coming due Friday or Saturday is also good. Just a key, finding students report feeling more comfortable and confident in their studies and in the course when they anticipate and receive regular communication. So they may be less likely to send that email or go into kind of stress mode there for a second if they know that you'll be updating them in your weekly video announcement or Blackboard announcement post. And last tip here, best ways to communicate with students. Posting announcements on your Blackboard course page is always helpful. I know many of you utilize that regularly already, so thank you. Please keep that up. As many of you know, when you post an announcement, there's a little box you can click towards the bottom where it will send the announcement via email also. So the students are getting it 2 different ways. 1, when they log in, they see it on the announcement page of Blackboard. And 2, a copy of the same announcement goes to their email. So it's kind of a double dip there. Sending emails via the Blackboard email tab is also recommended. And finally, meeting with students via Blackboard Collaborate. And Barb's going to talk more about that here in just a second. Of course, those of you that have scheduled synchronous sessions, you're very familiar with how those check-ins work. But also for those of you that are teaching asynchronous courses or even face-to-face courses where there's not a required synchronous time, even logging into your Collaborate for, say, an office hour once or twice a week can be kind of a good way to put a face to the name of some of the students for those of you that teach online asynchronous courses. Every course has a Blackboard Collaborate classroom built into it. So there's just a few communication tips and tricks. I'm going to send it back over to Barb to talk with you more about.
Thank you so much. So there we go. Oopsie daisy, we just went too far. Give me 1 second here. All right, so the first thing I want to tell you is you really are going to get out at 7:30. Just know that. But what we want to do is just remind you that whether you're teaching face-to-face or online or the new blended format, all of these tips apply to you because every one of you uses Blackboard. And So what we want to talk to you about now is specifically grading online in Blackboard. Now, please, I'm going to close my eyes so you can raise your hand and I won't see it. How many of you are a little terrified of grading in Blackboard? Raise your hands. Okay, I'm not looking. My eyes are closed. So here's the thing. Every signature assignment is uploaded into Blackboard. And if you use discussion board, whether you are a face-to-face person or an online person, or teaching face-to-face or online, if you use discussion board, all of those are in Blackboard. What we want to encourage you to do is do all of your grading eventually in Blackboard. And we understand that for some of you, that's a little terrifying. So we want to show you how easy it is to do. And Tim, I'm going to do something that will make you happy. I'm not going to run this through Collaborate. I'm just going to switch to a different screen, okay? Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to pop over to my Blackboard classroom, and I'm just going to show you how simple it is to grade online. But before I do, I just want to tell you, Ashley mentioned that all of you have Collaborate rooms in your classroom. Now, those of you who teach online and have sync sessions know this, but those of you who don't may not realize that you do have classrooms in your Blackboard shell. Mine is right down here. I named it Barbara's Classroom. Yours just says Collaborate, but you can rename it if you like to your classroom. And you can use that anytime you like. And the way, when you click on that, all you're going to do is click on Join Room, and it's going to get you right into the room. And that's what your students are going to do as well. We are obviously not going to do that now because we have already joined the room. All right. So what I want to do is just go to, actually what I want to do is show you my discussion board here and show you how easy it is to grade a discussion board. So I have 3 discussions that are happening right now, and you can see that my students are actually doing a really good job. There's only 3 students in the class, and they're doing a really good job of participating. So if we look at week 1, we could just see what all of my students are doing. So now we can see that there are 9 unread posts, but there are 10 total, and that's because I posted something, so that's why. I could just, if I wanted to, just hit grade thread, but I want to actually show you what it looks like first. All right, so here's my post, and I'm not going to read it all to you. Basically, it's an icebreaker. It's a license plate icebreaker. It's create a license plate that tells a little bit about you. Mine is heart to be in AFRC. You can go on and read that yourself and read my whole story if you like. All right, so now the students responded to that. Practice student 1 made a response, and he said what his license plate would be. Practice student 2 replied to that response. And okay, obviously these are really short responses. Don't stress over that, but I just want you to see all of these. Okay, now I need to grade this because I'm an instructor that cares about my students and I want them to have timely feedback, right? So I could grade this in a variety of ways. All right, so now that I've seen this, okay, I'm looking at all this, I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to do this? Because they're just all over the map here. So now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to click on this again, and I'm going to just grade the thread. Okay, now what I can do is I could grade each student's paper, each student's response. Too bad I can't open it. There you go. All right, and so now you see practice student 1, practice student 2, and test student. And what you'll see is that how many posts each of them did. And each of them did the required amount. Well, actually, they didn't really. They only did 3 each, but that's okay. That's all I required. Some people require more. Actually, we really do. But so now what I can do is I could grade practice student 1's posts. All right, so what I want you to see is there's this place right here for feedback to learner. So I think what sometimes happens is we think, okay, well, we're just going to give 5 points. So we just say 5 points and we close it. But you know what? Practice student 1 did a great job, and I want that student to know what a good job she did, or he did. Actually, I can't remember if he's, okay. Anyway, we'll deal with that later. Okay, so I'm going to give some feedback, and I'm going to say great job. But really, I would say a lot more than that if I was really doing this. Hey, and I'm going to give 5 points because I really like that practice student not only made a reply, I'm going to scroll it down so you could see it. Here's his plate. And then he also replied to the other 2, right? So now I submit that. And what happens is now that goes directly into the grade center. So now we know that practice student 1 has a grade in the grade center. I think some people think the only way they can post a grade in Blackboard is to go straight to the grade center. But really, all of your grades can actually be populated once you grade in Blackboard. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So let's just go now to needs grading. And the discussion post we just graded is gone. It's not here anymore because we just graded it. But you could see that there's all these discussion posts that need to be graded. Now we've just graded practice student 1's grade. So now if I go to the full grade center, I'll show you that it populated in there. I'm just going to scroll over to discussion board 1. And it's right here, and you can see practice student 1 got his grade. And it's that easy. So anything you grade in Blackboard automatically populates. So you don't just need to just post a little score right here. Now I could do that, right? I could just click right on here and post a little score, but then the student gets no feedback. And what we're trying to do is encourage you to communicate with your students through grading, through feedback through grading. All right, now what we also thought would be really cool is if you got to see what practice student 1 saw. So now, let's go to my grade. Now this is practice student 1, and let's just see what he thinks about that grade that he just got. Okay, practice student 1 has a lot of grades, by the way, but maybe we can just find this very last one, a discussion board post, and there it is right there, week 1, DB1. And if practice student 1 clicks on this, there it is. Oopsie daisy. There's my feedback right there. Great job. So see, he could see exactly, I can give him lots of feedback. Now, when we talk about discussion boards, this is something that we've talked a lot about. It's what should you do on the discussion board? How much time should you spend? How visible should you be? Well, we like for you to respond to students in a couple of ways. The first way is, I love when you do a private response. And so we want those students to know that you actually have read their post. So one of the things you can do is reply privately and send a note that says, oh my goodness, you knocked it out of the park. That was the most brilliant thing, blah, blah, blah. But that's not the kind of thing you necessarily want to post publicly on the forum, because what happens if you do that? Then everybody says, yeah, what she said, right? And we don't want that. But then the other way that you really can encourage and support your students is by replying through grading. And so you can send a private reply, you can reply through grading, and then of course you can always just reply on the discussion board itself so that everybody can see your post. So there are 3 ways that you can communicate with your students. And we want you to use all of those ways because we want our students to receive all the richness that you're bringing through different methods. All right, so that's the discussion board. Now I just want to go out of this student's class because remember, we're still in my practice. Oh, by the way, you want to see? Oh, well, those are his grades. Okay, I don't need to show you that again. All right, now I'm going to go back to the grade center very quickly, and I'm going to go back to the needs grading section. And I'm going to see, okay, I'm not a very good teacher because you can see I've got a ton of stuff to grade. And some of it is really old, like from July 30th. So I better get on this grading thing because I'm not doing a very good job of timely feedback right now. But if I were to just look at this assignment posted by practice student 1 again. And this is maybe a signature assignment. And now I know this is scary. I know some of you may be thinking it is much easier for me to just open this little document right here, download it, print it, write on it with my purple pen, and then go back into Blackboard and write a note. I know that some of you are thinking you want to do that. And I just want to encourage you that we all start out in a scary place, but you can move to this too. I promise you can. Remember those days when you used to hand write out everything and then go to your typewriter and type it? Who does that anymore? Does anybody in this room do that? Please don't raise your hand because I have my eyes open. Okay. But that's how I started too, right? When I did my bachelor's degree, I wrote everything out and then I went to my typewriter and typed it. We don't do that anymore. And in the same way that we learned, it wasn't that, well, technology changed, yay, right? But it wasn't just that technology changed, I changed. And technology has changed, but you can change too. So here's how you're going to just grade in Blackboard. We're just going to do it really, really quickly. Okay? So I have this, this is the paper right here. I'm not going to download it. I'm not going to write on it with my purple pen, but I am going to make comments. So I'm going to use this little bar right here. Oopsie daisy. Come on, open it. There. Come on, you can do it. There you go. And now I'm just going to use these little guys to grade right here. So I'm going to just right now, very simply, just point out something, and I'm going to say, yeah, touch is an extremely loud comment of nonverbal communication. You are right. Okay, great. Okay, good. I'm doing a good job here. Okay. And I need to scroll over, and I can't find the little scrolly bar. Uh-oh. Well, that is one of the challenges. Like, oh, scroll it down. That's right. Thank you. There it is. Okay. All right. All right. So now maybe I want to do more than that, right? I'm going to also, maybe I'm going to highlight something because I really like, I'm going to do this area comment here. I'm just going to say, I mean, I'm not even looking at it right now, right? But I'm just going to go like this, and I'm going to go, oh, wow, this needs to be deleted. All right, delete, because I don't think you want that there. Okay, whatever comments I make, right? I'm just going to go through, okay, I might highlight with a pretty little blue, and it's because I really like the blue highlighter, so I might just highlight this, all of that. And then maybe I'm going to type a comment. I can do whatever I want. All right, all that to say, when I'm done marking up this paper, and now it just looks, and let me just show you something here. All right, so here it is. When I'm done marking all this up, now I'm just going to give it a grade. So this way the student's going to get all of this feedback, and it's going to be so much faster than if I downloaded it, printed it, wrote on it with my purple pen, and then went in and tried to make comments. They're going to get this immediate feedback. And again, we're not saying you have to grade every paper in 10 minutes after it comes, but you actually could when you use this method. All right, so now, here I am. Very quickly, I just think, oh man, I better grade this on the rubric, right? Here's the rubric. So I can just fill it out right here. Oh, novice, I didn't think she did a very good job. All right. Oh, very good. Proficient here, and the little note that says, good. Good. And you would obviously make more comments on that. All right. Okay. Now, what's my points? It just gave me my points down here. I can't even see it. Yes, I will do that. But I wanted to figure out what my points were. Okay. Oh, and there you go. And now it's populated. Okay. So now now I'm going to send her another little note that says again, really good job. Good. Okay. Okay. Save. Submit. All right. So now this goes into my grade center, right? And my grades are now populated. And what does practice student see when practice student gets his grades? Practice student now goes to my grades. Come on, PS. Go, 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 go. All right, there you go. And is it down here? There it is right there, right? And so now practice student gets his grade. See, that wasn't so hard, was it? Now, here's the thing. You might be thinking, oh, yeah, that was really easy because you just ran through it. But when I try to do it, everything goes wrong that can go wrong. And we understand that. We really do. Right, Ashley? Do we understand that? Let me get Ashley back. I need Ashley. Ashley, is that true? That it's terrifying when they're actually doing it themselves?
Yes.
So we have a plan for that. So here's what Ashley and I do. We actually meet with new adjunct faculty, and we work with them on all sorts of things, new adjunct faculty orientation, training, but we also love working with the old people. We love working with the adjunct faculty that have been with us for a long time because we love retraining, and we love sitting down with you and helping you get through this. And so would be honored if you would call me and say, boy, I would really love for you to walk through this with me. I would love to do that, and I know Ashley would too. And what we'll do is we'll meet you in this little classroom right here, this Collaborate classroom, and we'll just walk you through all of this. And in fact, we can even add you to this little course, this little practice course that we have, and you can practice grading yourself. So you're not alone in this, and you don't have to be frightened of doing this at all. And the other thing is you may be thinking, oh yeah, but I teach face-to-face. So if you're good and we like you, we're going to be asking you to teach online soon. I just want to warn you. So be prepared, because we are going to ask you. All right, Ashley, what else do you want to say?
I'm just going to add one last thing. I saw one of the questions floating around the chat window about how to add rubrics. That's certainly something we can walk you through as well. And there's also some Blackboard tutorials for how to add rubrics to your assignments so that they do appear when you do the grading. The other thing too is as we continue to develop and revamp our class, the hope is that every assignment is collected via Blackboard and that those rubrics will already be uploaded to your Blackboard course shells, so there won't be anything that you have to do on your end.
Right, exactly. Those shells are so built out. So in the next couple of minutes, Ashley, can you just show us who else is in the classroom and what's going on? I'm going to click on it too so we could see who else has joined us today. We have a couple of other students in the room. And Ashley, do you want to do some stuff with us?
Yeah, just quickly, we have down here on the right-hand side of our white control panel, you'll see several buttons. We've got our chat window on one side. We've got our participants list with 4 of us here participating. And we have our little arrow coming out of a box here, which is our share content, which has been allowing people like myself and Kat all evening to share various files with each of you. Whether it be PDFs or PowerPoints, lots of opportunities. And we also encourage you to play around in your Blackboard Collaborate rooms with things like polling and breakout groups and separating people into breakout groups for some maybe smaller group collaboration as well.
I want to thank all of our students who were in the classroom, and apologize that we didn't get you do too much in the class, but thank you for coming. And I think we're going to, Ashley, do you think we could turn this back over to Ron now?
Absolutely. I think so. We'll make our PowerPoint and available to everyone, and hope to set up a tutorial session with all of you if you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love for you all to give us a call, because we would love to work with all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. Okay, thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Barb. Great job. Okay, we have 2 minutes to go. Whew. Did you think we're going to make it through the night? Okay, thank you for being so patient. Thank you for being understanding. You know that if you've been here before, it doesn't typically go like this. Typically it goes a little smoother, but you know what? That's just the way it goes, and that's just fine. So, just want to close with one comment, and that is, as we go into the future, we're looking to more and more online classes. And so if you are inclined to teach online, please work on these skills, because we will be doing more and more online instruction. Okay? And so we have great resources in Barb, and Ashley, and all the other people here at Concordia that can help you with that. Things have gone a long way since we first started with the whole online experience. So we're really pleased, and we're so fortunate to have such great experts like Barb and Ashley and Catherine and Kelly that help us to keep moving forward. So thank you for your participation tonight, everybody. I do want to say that Tim has been fantastic. Let's give Tim a hand. If Tim had not been there, I would have been out the door a long time ago and just wished you all good night. So thank you, Tim. Okay, one last thing, though. As we look to next year, we want to respond to your needs. So as we move more to online instruction and you look at teaching online more, what can we do next year in these meetings to support you in being a better teacher teaching online? Okay, so shoot emails my way, please, ron.lamont@cui.edu. Send emails of what topics or things we could do next year with regard to online teaching that can support you. Okay, so we know what your needs are and can help move you forward in that arena. Okay, so please do that. And we appreciate that. One last thing, our next meeting will be in August, as typically we start off the year with our first meeting in August. This year we discovered that a lot of schools started early this year. And so we're having our first meeting the same time you're starting school, which is not a good idea. But we didn't know that so many districts had changed. So please let me know, if you wouldn't mind, when your schools start next year for the fall, so we can plan our meeting accordingly, so we're not stepping on your toes when you're trying to get school off the ground, because I know how that is, trying to get the school year started and trying to attend a meeting like this. So please let us know when your schools are starting so we can try to plan our calendar accordingly. We'll get some input and try to just set a date that will be more with what we want to accomplish, which is supporting you, not making it harder, okay? So thank you once again. Great job tonight. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your school year. Thank you. Justin, thanks.
Hey, nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you.